Hey scrappers, if you're looking to figure out what materials you should sell this week or hold this week, now is the time to do it. Our weekly report is going to give you that information, up-to-date market news, pricing. Let's get right into it. We'll talk about it inside. Hey scrappers, Tom from the iScrap app, and today is Wednesday, July 19th, 2023. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope everything is going well for you guys. Last week in the markets has been a little crazy, a lot of fluctuations, a lot of market news about different Chinese stimuluses, different overseas demands, and we'll get into all of that in the next few minutes. So if you have questions, ideas, comments, please comment below when you're watching this way we can get you some of those answers. And I actually have a list of some questions that people have been asking and some things that I want to address. So I'll talk about those today also, but we'll jump right into the copper markets. Copper has been really funny today. Copper's trading around 380, 382, and a week and a half ago it was in the 367, 370 range. And on Thursday, this past Thursday, it got up to $3.94. We've seen this big trading fluctuations. And if we check out some of the reported prices that we're seeing online, you're going to see some of those prices, really being reflected in a very overall stable market. So let's check out the Bear Bright prices online right now. And if you look right now, we have a 302 average nationally on Bear Bright, but we've seen different reported numbers in the 260s to 320s. 330, 340s as well. But what we haven't seen is large jumps. The other day we saw copper prices jump about 14 cents, and that national average was not reflected because a lot of scrap yards don't change their prices the day that prices go up. They will change them if markets go down very quickly. So we saw that really quick up on Thursday, and then starting on Friday into Monday and then Tuesday, we saw a downtick. So it kind of offset itself. So copper prices right now are really being pushed by a few different things, one of which is coming out of China. And I know I always talk about the Chinese, but one thing that I'm reading about is the Chinese economy. And the Chinese economy is actually cutting their interest rates because they're not having large economic growth. And what that means for scrap is it doesn't really bode very well, because the Chinese are even talking about having a stimulus injected into their economy because they're just not seeing the large growth that other countries are seeing. And one of those reasons is that they still have a more of a hangover from COVID. And if you think about the United States, for instance, 2020 was like a wash. The second half of 2021 is when things started to get moving. 2022, we saw the inflation jumping up and the interest rates kind of following, and that was from a lot of the stimulus that we saw through both administrations. The Chinese, however, had a much, much longer lockdown, and they didn't release the lockdown until 2023. So they may be a full year behind, and they didn't do a lot of stimulus like other countries did, especially here in the United States. So not having stimulus, a lot of people in China were dipping into their savings, and now they're finally able to go out and start working and really saving again, full-time, regular, kind of like a 2019. But the Chinese economy is really, it's slipping a little bit, and they always like to have about a 5% year-over-year growth, and they're on track for about 2 to 3% right now, which does not bode well for the copper prices because the Chinese demand makes up so much of the copper demand. So we haven't seen copper prices have that extra jump forward, but I still hear rumblings that we could hear the markets dropping 30 to 40 cents later this summer, and they could be following what may be a bit of a collapse in the steel markets. Now, talking about steel right now, we've seen some light iron prices in the $140 range. We'll pull that up right now. We'll look at some light iron markets, but we haven't seen a huge increased demand on steel. We're seeing a lot of people commercially selling their steel as quickly as it gets in. And I'm not talking scrappers, I'm talking larger scrap yards. So when you have scrap yards moving their material so fast, it's going to make it very, very difficult to get high prices. Let's go and click on light iron. When we look at light iron prices over the last couple of days, we'll see some some strong prices in the 146 range, so we are up slightly. But what I'm hearing right now is very little overall demand. I'm actually starting to see big pullbacks in prices. I've seen about $30 to $40 per ton coming off some of my own sales numbers, which has then affected my numbers at the door buying from scrappers. So when you're out there, don't be surprised in the coming weeks if you start to see a lower price for steel. 146 per ton for light iron off of reported prices is really strong right now. That may, by the end of July or even August, go to the 130 to 135 number, if not lower from what I'm hearing right now. So keep an eye on though, even though we've seen oil prices trade in the $76 per barrel range, we still have seen transportation costs having a little higher impact. Wages cut into some of these steel prices, but really it continues to be the same story. The commercial demand is not there. It's just not there right now. And having the steel demand not there, I have no reason to hold any of it. And if I were you, most of my grades I'd be selling as soon as I got them into the truck, the trailer, or whatever dumpster that you're filling today. So I'll pause for a second to talk about scrap prices, but I do want to talk about something before my scrap story. And it's a really important topic, and it's talking about the heat. Now, we've seen people talking online about how hot it is throughout Canada, throughout the United States. We've seen the wildfires continuing to have an impact in the Northeast and other places, but a lot of people are talking about how hot it is. I just wanted to pull this up directly from OSHA, and it just talks about the color of your pee. So not something that I would normally talk about, but if you look at this chart on the way right, if your pee is like the color of, I don't know, mustard, right? If you have mustard pee, that is a really bad sign. And that's how a lot of people really get dehydrated quickly. At my yard, I tell the guys to drink 1 bottle of water per hour. Some of them ask if Red Bull is acceptable. The answer is no, water is acceptable. And if you look at the far left side of this chart where the pee is slightly yellow, right, but more clear, that's a really good sign of hydration, making sure that you're keeping those fluids moving, because when you're sweating, you just don't realize how quickly that liquid pours out of you. That's when the heat exhaustion pops in and can really affect you. So make sure you're taking breaks if it's really hot. If you're working outside, we've seen a lot of scrappers using tarps or tents that they put up over them, the collapsible tents. And that's a really good product that you may find in scrap. A lot of people find some of these tents in scrap, and you can buy new tarps for them. Having something to work over you is going to be one of the best things for you, because having that sun not beating down on you and working in the shade is a really positive thing. At my yard, we put up a huge roof about 7 years ago, about 5,000 square foot exterior roof. It was not only to protect against the rain, but it was to protect against the snow, and more importantly, the heat. So anytime we're doing any type of dismantling, we like to do it under the roof so the sun isn't beating down on us. So without further ado, let me give you a quick scrap story. A few years ago, you guys remember the Toys R Us company was kind of closing down, and I had the opportunity to go to one of their distribution centers and buy a bunch of the racking and forklifts that were going out. And it was one of the craziest places that I've ever been. I've been to a lot of really big factories. I've been to power plants. I've been to Amazon. I've been to other retailers that have large, inventories. But this particular warehouse that I went to was 3 million square feet. But what was really impressive to me is that the ceilings were over 100 foot tall, and the racking system that they had was almost unbelievable. And they had racks, they had safety, they had all types of things all over it. And as a former kid, I guess a big kid, right, that used to love to go to Toys R Us, it was really kind of nostalgic to be able to walk around and see all these different signs and just see how many toys were actually there. The entire facility used to be used for the Northeast distribution, 3 million square feet. And if I'm wrong, I apologize, but it took me about 25 minutes just to walk across part of the plant. It was that incredibly big. So just a cool scrap story of an opportunity I had a few years ago I wanted to share with everyone. So another thing that we've been looking at is where the demand is coming for different metals, right? I oftentimes talk about China, but today I'm going to talk about Europe. The European demand right now is really a very juxtaposed position compared to the United States. In the United States, over the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen steady wage growth. And in Europe, we've seen the opposite. In Europe, we've started to see the wage growths either stagnating or even receding a little bit. And why is that important to scrap? That just shows that their demand for goods is going to be going down because they're making less money compared to 15 years ago. And when you have people making less money compared to what they were making 15 years ago, the demand for stuff is not going to be as high. I was in Europe on vacation last week, and it was funny because I was looking at a lot of the infrastructure when I was around. Sometimes when I go away on vacation, I'll look at different things and I'll try to compare them to the United States. I didn't see a lot of cranes. I didn't see a lot of commercial growth. I saw a lot of old buildings, and I saw a lot of places that were really getting run down. And it had been about 8 years since I was in Europe last. So seeing some of the European countries and cities really starting to recede is not a positive sign when it comes to the scrap demand. They had a lot of the problems last year with their energy where they had to cut Russia out. But what we haven't seen is a large demand overall from the Europeans when it comes to a growth side of things. Certain countries have had little blips where companies like Tesla built a factory in Germany, but we haven't seen that huge growth. And a lot of the consumer goods are what we look for on the scrap side of things to be able to see how much metal people are using inside of the stuff that they buy. So that was just something else that was out there I wanted to mention. Now, I'd like to talk about catalytic converters, which we have finally seen a little resuscitation and a little life. About a week ago, platinum prices were below $900 an ounce. Today, they're almost at $1,000 an ounce. They had a really nice 9% increase, and you can see some of the prices here on rrcats.com. The team over at rrcats.com providing free price quotes, free shipping on OEM catalytic converters, and holding prices for 10 business days, which is a really great feature. While we have seen those national averages dipping, in the $83 range right now, all the way from 220 or 250 from the all-time high, we have seen a little bit of stabilization. We've seen those platinum prices, like I just said, increasing. I've also seen palladium prices increasing about 4.5% week over week, while rhodium has stayed the same. So catalytic converters may be an item, maybe you've been saving a few of them for a few weeks or a few months with the lower prices. Start to check out these prices and learn some of these price quotes, because we are seeing a little bit of an uptick in the markets, which is a really great sign. Let's see what else we have going on. Facebook, YouTube. Brass prices relatively stable, going right along with the copper prices. We haven't seen much movement there. Brass prices around $1.90, I believe, when I looked at the average prices. One item I would like to talk about is nickel. I continue to talk about stainless, and boy, oh boy, stainless prices really have been smothered by these nickel markets. We've seen nickel prices around 20,000 per ton, and they're all the way down in the last few months, which has really been unfortunate. And they're kind of following the same trend that we've seen aluminum on. Aluminum prices have really been dipping down since the last 3 months or so. We saw a steady decline in aluminum markets, with sheet aluminum. We'll bring up the sheet price right now. Aluminum cans here. Aluminum cans, 47 cents per pound, a 12% decrease month over month in the aluminum can prices. And if we could pull up the aluminum sheet numbers, that will give you another mimicking and kind of the echoing of the market getting hurt right now. We just don't see a strong pricing for these. I'm seeing traders kind of pushing all over the place here. Actually, we've seen an uptick in aluminum, sheet aluminum reported prices, which is great. But around 40 cents is kind of the number that we're seeing. We've seen some higher numbers, 42, 47. But I think that what you see is kind of what you're going to get right now. We just don't see a huge demand. Here are some more aluminum prices, mixed markets, depending on what you have. Some of the aluminum prices are kind of stale. Some of them are seeing upticks. Some of these don't get reported on as often because day-to-day scrappers may not be doing things like engine blocks or thermopane. So you'll see some numbers in the charts when they have a lot of movement. they have a lot more reported prices. So check out some of the reported prices we have. Don't forget, with over 200 prices listed on iScrap App's website, our mobile app, and then our native app for Android and iPhones, it just gives you up-to-date prices. It gives you alerts and different notifications for different markets. And don't forget, post your own prices. Super easy to do. Will take you, a couple of minutes. I mean, if you can watch this for 15 minutes, you can report a couple of prices that you've received too. It'll just help yourself remember what you've gotten at your own yard, as well as seeing what other people are getting, so you can compare and even try to improve some of your prices. We've gotten so many stories over the years through iScrap where they've used the basic prices from iScrap to negotiate at their own yard, maybe not for 40 or 50 pounds, but 400 or 500 pounds of non-ferrous is certainly a negotiable number. I certainly do negotiate those prices at my own yard, and you guys can as well. And that's just one of the tricks that we've been able to teach you over the years. So scrappers, today is Wednesday, July 19th, 2023. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about next week. Please stay hydrated out there. Make sure you got those water bottles with you. One of the most important things you can have, a bottle of water an hour, is really, really key when you have this heat. Any other questions, let us know. And until next week, I'll scrap you later.
Thanks for checking out this scrap video. For more exclusive scrap video content, please become a YouTube member of our channel today. Thank you, and I'll scrap you later.